What's going on, family? How y'all doing? Yeah, it's late night. I just wanted you all to hear this. When I be on here rambling about, my point of view, you know what I'm saying? Um, I don't be just talking about nothing. I just wanted you all to hear a little bit of where I sometimes I get my ideas from. Here is the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. He came out with his another book called Capitalist Manifesto, and he was talking about when he wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he was getting interviewed. And I just wanted you all to hear an excerpt of it so that you all can understand my mindset. All right, so hold on, and here we go.
Hey, on the eve of the 25th anniversary of the release of Rich Dad Poor Dad, our book is still an international bestseller and ranks as the #1 personal finance book in history. When Rich Dad Poor Dad first made the New York Times bestsellers list, I was vilified for calling my poor dad poor. After all, my poor dad was a highly educated, very smart man. He was a good husband, father, and public servant, a man who at one time served as the superintendent of education for the state of Hawaii. Poor Dad had graduated from the University of Hawaii in 2 years and went on to do postgraduate studies at Stanford University, University of Chicago, and Northwestern University. In 1970, an honest man who had become fed up with the corruption he found as a member of the governor of Hawaii's staff, my poor dad ran for lieutenant governor as a Republican against his boss, the governor of Hawaii, a Democrat. After being crushed in the election, the governor blacklisted my dad from any employment in state government in Hawaii. Unable to find a job, my poor dad found out how poor he really was and died a poor man. In 1991, just before his death, he was awarded an honorary PhD by his peers, fellow school teachers, for his dedication to education. I remember my dad being moved to tears and saying, "They did not forget me." In 1969, after graduating from the United States Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, I joined the U.S. Marine Corps and went to U.S. Navy Flight School in Pensacola, Florida. After receiving my wings, I spent a year at Advanced Weapons School flying at Camp Pendleton, California. In 1972, I was on board an aircraft carrier flying off the coast of Vietnam. In January of 1973, I returned from Vietnam to find my dad sitting alone at home, unemployed. When I asked him, what should I do when my contract with the Marines is complete in 1974, his fatherly advice was, go back to school, get your master's degree, possibly your PhD, get a job flying for the airlines, work hard, pay taxes, save money, get out of debt, buy a house, and invest for the long term in the stock market. As I listened to his advice, I realized that he was offering me the same advice he had followed, and that it was advice that led him into near poverty. In January of 1973, I left my poor dad's home and went to my rich dad's office in Waikiki. I went to Rich Dad for his fatherly advice. Rich Dad's advice was the opposite side of the coin from my poor dad's advice. Rich Dad's fatherly advice was, get a job learning to sell, learn to invest in real estate, learn to use debt as money, learn to make millions and pay little in taxes legally. Do not become an employee. Learn to be an entrepreneur so you can create jobs for hundreds of employees. In June 1974, at the age of 27, I returned my last salute from the Marine Guard as I drove through the gates and off the Marine Corps Air Station at Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. In June of 1974, I did not listen to my poor father, but listened instead to the advice of my rich father.
And that's all I wanted you all to hear. So, the point and the moral of the story is that's everything that I always talk about when I'm talking to you all, talking to you guys when I'm on here rambling, is those same talking points. Because just like Robert Kiyosaki, he went into the Marines. I went into the Navy, so I went into the military. He was an officer, but I was enlisted. When I got out of school, when I got out of the military, I went to go work with my father who had his own business. Okay, I had to learn how to sell in order to be able to generate my own income. Because yeah, when I did become an employee, the employee route did not work out too well for me. But then, as I said, over time, you start seeing other people who was like his poor dad, who, did the education and job route, and you see how they ended up. They still ended up, just barely making it, even after it was time for them to retire. And as he said he watched his father, who was very successful, who had all of these degrees, who had, high paying jobs, and still ended up sitting on the couch poor. and lonely because his wife died earlier. And his rich dad, who didn't have a college education, became one of the richest men in Hawaii because he learned about business and growing business and learning about real estate. And so these are the things that I saw that actually even works for me on the smallest level that I'm on. So when I'm sitting here and I'm talking to you all, I'm not talking to you all because I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking to you all, as a mad scientist who took, you know, the advice of the books that I read, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and now I'm reading this book, Capitalist Manifesto, and I'm just taking it and I'm testing it out and I'm seeing what works and I'm bringing it back to you guys, because I want to see everybody win. Now you all can say, hey, he's just rambling and you don't know what he's talking about. Fine. Don't listen to me. But I do implore you to read the books. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was an excellent book. You know, I read the whole Rich Dad series, Capitalist Manifesto. I'm reading it now and I'm liking it. Some of the stuff I don't agree with it, but the basics and the fundamentals are still in the book and they still apply even till today. That information is timely, you know. So that's all. I mean, when y'all hear me rambling, it's not I'm just, talking out of the side of my neck. I do, you know, read. I do, you know, watch a lot of podcasts and on business and real estate, and listen to audiobooks like this. YouTube University. I'm definitely one person, and then I go out and I execute this stuff. I apply this stuff to real life, and all I'm doing is I'm coming back and showing you the results of what I found from the books that I read. Okay. And even even now, I started writing some of my own books and applying some of these methods and putting it into books what I've learned from my experience. So that's it. I don't want to sit here and get all long-winded, but I did want to you all to hear that excerpt. I hope you all are understanding what I'm putting down, okay? And I hope this helps you all, even in these trying times, because he's talking about that now with Trump, coming into office. He's giving you the mindset that you need to be able to overcome, a Trump presidency, a Republican ran Congress. These are the, ideas that you need to be able to live and thrive in this economy, in this information age. You know, and that's it. I'm done. I hope you all have a good night. Check out this book. It's definitely excellent, but I would definitely, recommend that you all read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and a lot of the books in Robert Kiyosaki series as well. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, Retire Young, Retire Rich. I've read them all. And I implore that you all read them too. Rich Kid, Smart Kid. For the people who want to get their kids a head start and teaching them about financing. All right, all right. Enjoy the rest of you all's night. Peace.